Hello, beautiful dragon people. It's me, your pal Vero, here to bring you some more of that Dragon Prince content to tide us over till the next season is finally released. So today, in the form of kind of an update video on the upcoming 𝐀𝐧𝐝 𝐫𝐤 tabletop RPG, which, as you guys are well aware of, I've spoken about at length. I'm very excited about. So Fandom Tabletop, the people behind the 𝐫𝐤 RPG that's coming out soon, just did a Q&A, which they do, I guess, occasionally on their Twitch, which I will have a link to their Twitch in the description. And they answered some questions about the game and released a little bit of concept art for it. So this video is going to be going over that. It's going to be real casual. We're just going to kind of go through the parts of the video where they're talking about 𝐀𝐧𝐝 𝐫𝐤, and I will come in and out with my comments and thoughts. So without further delay, let's get right into it, guys.
Hello everyone, I'm Adam and this is Cam with Cortex, and we are here for this week's primetime development update and community Q&A session. Thank you for joining us. It's been a couple of weeks off. Schedules have been incredibly hectic. We had this thing called an inauguration going on in the US one of those weeks. So we have rejoined you here today. Thank you for joining us. And if you have questions, we're going to get into those at the end, and you can actually start asking those right now. And our little magical ritual spell that we've cast, we'll collect those up and we'll get to them at the end. But you just preface it with a word question, and the magic little automated thing will collect them and we'll get to them. The latest updates we'll get into upcoming, just like always. We've got a couple of exciting previews today that we'll get into. And Cam's going to talk about some design notes, a really interesting new concept that is going to be introduced in 𝐀𝐧𝐝 𝐫𝐤 for Cortex that I think is going to have some big ramifications across all of Cortex. So that's going to be really nice to talk about. And then we will share some more 𝐀𝐧𝐝 𝐫𝐤 concept art, and again, get to questions. However much time we have at the end, that's how much we'll spend on questions. So let's jump right in.
So right away, they start saying the word Cortex. So I looked it up, and apparently Cortex is a game and a game system. So I guess it's kind of like 𝐀𝐧𝐝 𝐫𝐤 might be running in a similar system to Cortex, another game that they developed. So anytime you hear them talk about Cortex or say Cortex, they're talking about another game that they have made. So I guess there's going to be some similarities between the two. But I guess we'll wait and see.
Public playtesting, as we just referred to, there's a lot of internal playtesting going on right now. Public playtesting for 𝐀𝐧𝐝 𝐫𝐤 is very, very soon. And then Legends of Grayskull will be at some point later this year, and really excited for people to be able to take those games out for a test drive and give us your feedback and let us know how that part's going. So that is what's coming up. And then we're going to get into a new aspect of design that has come up in 𝐀𝐧𝐝 𝐫𝐤 that I personally am a huge fan of this, and I think it's going to, again, as I said earlier, have some ramifications across all of Cortex, and refining that into some of even future games that we might make with Cortex. So Cam, take this one away.
Yeah, something that we really like the idea of is characters that may start out not necessarily being villains or heroic allies or anything like that, but just important pivotal characters which the player characters can influence and steer over in one way or another. And the coolest part about it is not only will these catalysts, or what we're calling these important narrator or GM characters, not only are they going to grow and change as characters, the player characters interact with them, but the more you might interact with one, bring them to your side, that may make another catalyst who's in the same tale turn against you. So you're taking sides, maybe you want to try and balance it out in the middle of it. There'll be some difficult choices to make with catalysts in the game. The inspiration for this also, our narrative lead Dan Telfer and I were working through an idea of this. How do we make really exciting tales that you can have replayability value? So when you're playing your stories and with your friends, if you go back later on and talk to someone else who played the same tale, can you say, oh yeah, we had this thing where this one character was really amazing, became our best friend. They might say, what? That person was the arch villain of our story. How did that happen? And it's all because we have this mechanic of making them change and grow and respond to the activity that the players put into it.
Okay, so this sounds really fascinating. So basically, we'll be able to influence different non-player characters in the game world with some kind of catalyst system where we'll be able to kind of like turn them towards the dark side or towards the light side. This sounds really fascinating, and it doesn't sound like anything that I've encountered before in a tabletop game. But it does kind of remind me, it sounds like, I don't know how many of you guys remember the game KOTOR 2 or Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic 2, for all you guys who don't know the game. But in that game, it would let you kind of turn your party members from the light to the dark based on conversations you have with them, and certain key moments in the game will kind of change how people respond to you. So I'm curious if this is going to be kind of similar to that, because that was one of my favorite things about that game, and I've never really found a game that really gave me that feeling of really being able to influence the world around me, the characters in the world around me, like I did with that video game. And if I have the kind of freedom that tabletop games give me, and a mechanic that allows me to do that, I'm really, really excited about this. This might be the new thing that I'm the most excited about with Tales of Xadia. I really want to get my hands on this playtest material, because I can't read that. I cannot read what that page says. I need somebody to like upscale it for me.
Yeah, I think thinking through one of the goals that we've always had is to try to use, in this cyclical fashion, to use the best part of video games and how can they inform tabletop role playing, and then never lose sight of what actually makes tabletop role playing special, right? And so if you turn the tabletop role playing into a video game, that's not a good outcome, because why wouldn't you just play a video game? And you're still gonna hit the edge of the map and all the limitations that video games have. So again, as someone who enjoys playing video games, I absolutely appreciate that medium and being able to enjoy those, but I still am going to hands down take tabletop role playing any day of the week, because of so many of the benefits and bonuses that come from playing with a group of other humans around a table, virtual or otherwise. And so I think that one of the things that video games have done great jobs with in BioWare games and those kinds of experiences are to me, like when the team was initially pitching Catalyst, that's where my head started going, was like, hey, that's a good thing that we've seen play out very, very well in these video games, that I think really can have a huge impact in the tabletop role-playing space if we provide the right kind of framework for narrators and game masters and moderators to be able to play those. And so I'm really, really excited to see how Catalyst are going to play out, and excited for people to get their hands on them, and excited to hear the stories that, well, in my game, Catalyst, this Catalyst did this, and see, what most groups are using and how these Catalysts are behaving. So really, really excited to see where this goes. And I think it's going to be yet another one of those really interesting pieces of Cortex that's going to capture the world of the Dragon Prince in such a great way, and really retain the spirit of what makes that animated series so great.
So it's actually really interesting that he brings up BioWare. They're a game development company. I don't know if you guys, they make video games, and they did not make KOTOR 2, the game that I was just talking about with the influence system, which is really similar to the Catalyst system. But they did make the first game. The first game was a BioWare game, and then Obsidian took over and made the sequel. So I'm curious, is he saying that that's basically where he got the idea from? Because hey, that's awesome. I am so on board with this. I'm so glad that somebody is taking that idea and running with it. And I totally agree with him. There was a lot of limitations because it was a video game, but a tabletop game, the limitations are only your imaginations and the group's storytelling abilities. So I'm so on board with this Catalyst system. I cannot wait to test it out. If it works the way that I'm hoping it's going to work, I might just like take it and start putting it into my weekly Dungeons and Dragons games that I run. We'll see. It'll be really cool. I'm really, really excited to see what this Catalyst system is and exactly how it's going to play out.
It Also going to feed back into the general overarching Cortex Prime toolkit. So although the Catalyst, this idea wasn't in the Cortex Prime game handbook and it was new to this game, we are going to be feeding it back into Cortex Prime in general, so you may be able to use it along with everything else you've got. And that's probably going to be true for everything we do at Cortex. That's the whole point of it. It's an ecosystem that grows.
Absolutely. All right, let's get into some art. So this is some concept art that we're sharing at this point for some of the characters that these are characters they're going to see in the playtest, right?
I believe that's correct. That's the 6 characters, the playtest.
Yeah. And eventually end up in the full book at some point, likely to kind of represent some of the archetype type characters that you could play in the game. So yeah, really excited about this. It's exciting seeing characters come to life within the show, but then it's been this whole other experience of being able to put our own spin on some of these characters that are not in the show that the team's creating and drawing together. So yeah, really excited to see. How do you say it, Cam? I say Dion. Is that what you say, or do you say something else? Diane.
I've been saying Diane.
Diane, yeah.
Diane is just fine. You can say pronounce them however you like. I think Wind is the one that we all know how to say.
Yeah, Diane though, like he is just killing it over there. I'm in love with what I'm seeing there. But yeah, all of these look really great, and I can't wait to see people be able to try them out very soon.
Also, very important to note that we are incredibly fortunate to have the talents from some folks who worked on the Dragon Prince to be our artists for this new content. So we've gone straight to the source for it.
Yep. Very exciting stuff. All right, so we're all going to give away a Cortex Prime game handbook at this point in time. To register to win this, you're going to just simply have to type in chat !Glowtoad. That is a Dragon Prince, very specific thing. So if you haven't seen the Dragon Prince, you're not going to have a clue what a Glowtoad is. But if you have, then you love them.
I do, though. I really do. They're so cute.
And so !Glowtoad, and good luck for anyone who might have a chance to win a digital copy of the Cortex Prime game handbook. And then I think that gets us to questions. So we'll go through all of the questions we have here. If you haven't asked questions yet, then feel free to jump into that. I'm going to, let's see. Craig Clee, will there be official published adventures for Tales? I'm going to say yes, and then let Cam elaborate a little bit more.
Yeah, the idea of the catalysts that we mentioned earlier is a good lead into this idea. We're going to be doing adventures which we call Tales. That's why it's Tales of Xadia. These scenarios and things will be heavily featuring catalysts as a building block of how they're going to work, with a really intense sort of approach to how we want to make it replayable, and so how each person who runs the game and plays the game can enjoy it in a different way but still have the same experience. I think everyone who comes together to write adventures for RPGs has the same idea. It'll be the holy grail. We'll do the one thing that makes everything better from how people have always done it. We don't really want to reinvent too many wheels, though. We know that adventures are great in general. People love them. They buy them because they want to take a lot of the prep off their hands, so to speak. But we also want to make it so that you can make it your own. And I think that's what we're planning on doing. Our forecast is generally trying to aim for something that ties into the show in a unique and cool way. And that's an opportunity we have that Wonderstorm's given us. And I think that's the biggest thing I can talk about, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, and it is public information, just to really reiterate how cool that is, that official exploration of storyline between the end of season 3 and the beginning of season 4. That's something that we're going to be doing, and nothing on that scale has been done before. And it's going to be really great for the Dragon Prince fans. It's going to be super cool to play through something and then watch the first episode of season 4 and say, hey, you know what? we did that in our group, and so yeah, that's definitely a plan for Tales of Xadia for there to be that official content coming out.
Okay, so that's kind of interesting. So first off, I wanted to talk about what he said about adventures. So for those of you guys who aren't familiar with like tabletop games, basically you get these small, short little books, and they're usually modules, and they'll just kind of tell the story, and they'll give the game master or the dungeon master kind of all the information that they need to run a certain scenario or a little like kind of story. It's interesting that they said that they are going to be coming, but they're also going to be focusing a lot on this new replayability kind of mechanic, which is fascinating. I am intrigued by that. I am curious, though, about how many Dragon Prince adventures we're going to be getting. I have no problem coming up with ideas and running my own, I'm sure, when I get my hands on the core rulebook. But still, officially published adventures can tie into the main story, which is kind of the second thing I wanted to talk about. Did he just imply that what we do in the tabletop game is going to have a direct effect on season 4? Because that's awesome if that's the case. That sounds so cool, man. Gosh, I can't wait for this tabletop game to come out. I want it so bad.
All right, let's see. Jason Sunday, how will players of heroes from different ancestries be recommended to be brought together? And I'm assuming that we're talking on the Dragon Prince side there, because that is an excellent question. And I think that, one thing that I'll say is that I probably won't go into what the easiest answer is, because it is absolutely a spoiler for some of the later seasons. But if you have watched all the seasons, there is, there are some events that happen that make that, potential melting pot that an adventuring group becomes a little bit of an easier barrier to cross. And so that's all I'll say without straying into, spoilers there. But Cam, you got anything that wouldn't be spoilerish that you would note there?
I think I can tell you that we will be giving full rules and backgrounds and everything else for all 5 of the human kingdoms and 3 of the elven ones. I think we already know about the Sunfire Elves and the Moonshadow Elves from the show, but we also met Skywing Elves on the show as well, and there'll be a lot more information about them for folks who are into the idea of playing someone like Nyx or Ibis.
Okay, so that's actually really cool. So I didn't know we were going to be able to So hold up. So are the 5 human kingdoms with the backgrounds? Does that mean is the background going to have like a mechanical effect? Like, is someone from Delbar going to play differently than a human from Xadia? Or is it just kind of something you put on your sheet? Like, oh yeah, I'm from Delbar, but mechanically all the humans are the same. I really wish I would have watched this live. I would have loved to have asked that question. Also, another thing that's kind of interesting is that he said that there's only going to be 3 background races. So does that mean that we're only going to be allowed to play as Moonshadow, Skywing, and Sunfire Elves? Because that's actually really interesting. It makes sense that they would release the other races as they kind of come in the show, and we gain more information about the different elven kingdoms. I actually kind of like that, because that's going to help keep things feeling a little bit more canonical for me, which is kind of more of the experience I would like. I would like for our adventures to more or less be lore friendly. It doesn't matter, we can always just say, oh, it's just an alternate dimension, another universe. So if that's kind of more your guys' speed, that's fine. But for me personally, in my group, we usually like to play our games when we do play them in like pre-established settings. We try to keep them canonical, or at least as much as we can keep it lore friendly. So that's actually really interesting. So we're going to have 5 human kingdoms, and we're going to have 3 of the elven races. So that's so cool. So cool.
As to how you can bring them all together, I think that we always want to default to there's an inn somewhere, we all walked in and someone gave us an adventure. Is that right? We're doing that one? We're not doing that one. Okay, we're not doing that.
Yeah. So again, I'll go into spoilers too much if I continue here, but there will be ways that it is explained. Voice games. How do primal magic spells compare mechanically to dark magic spells in Tales of Xadia?
Yeah, this is a really good question, because for the normal primal magic mages, they don't need any kind of components. They can cast it as long as there's air or water or earth. They can cast their magics. But for a dark mage, he's going to have like a pouch, like kind of like Xadia, where they're carrying like different kinds of like components, you know, eye of griffins and a cat's paw to cast like these different spells. So I'm really curious, like, are you going to have to procure these items in game? Are you going to have to go and like hunt down a griffin and take its eye in order to cast a spell, or are these things that you're going to be able to just kind of like write in your backstory, like, oh yes, I have gathered many components like before the adventure starts? Because that's actually really cool. I'm really curious how dark magic is gonna play out, because I imagine that a lot of us are going to really want to try to play as the, you know, the edgier, darker kind of characters. So I think dark magic is going to appeal to a lot of us in that regard. So I'm really curious how different mechanically it's going to play out. So let's hear what he has to say.
Or is dark magic a bit like blood magic in other fantasy TTRPGs, and players are discouraged from role-playing as dark mage characters? Cam, what are your thoughts?
Little early to talk too much about dark mages. They are definitely going to play differently from primal mages, rune mages as we call them. Mostly because using dark magic does bring corruption. It's not necessarily the best thing to do, and of course everyone hates people who use dark magic. That is not a surprise, unless they're Xadia and they can get away with it because they're so cute. Hashtag Team Xadia. I think that in terms of mechanically speaking,
Cam is obsessed with Xadia. Throughout this entire process, I've had to I don't think we should write about Xadia in this section. I don't think we should do artwork of Xadia in this section. But yes, everybody internally, big Xadia fans.
But that does mean that we don't want to take away from this idea that you can play a dark mage. Obviously, for most humans, and for almost every human character, the option of being a rune mage is not available to you unless you're 𝐀𝐧𝐝 and you're very special. But we will be pursuing those options for you. It'll be a playable thing you can play. Mechanically speaking, a little bit different, but with Cortex, a lot of the stuff seems to be flavor on top of some crunch. I think you'll see enough difference between the actual rules for it that you'll be happy with it, but not so different that you'll have to have an entire extra book of rules to do dark magic.
Well, I think it's really important to just understand and keep in mind one of the key conceits of Cortex is that the rules are supporting storytelling, and it's, you know, coming back to what the show's story and that feel of that. You know, there will be consequences just like it displays in the show, but at the same time, it's like those consequences will play themselves out within the framework of the storytelling, and not necessarily in a system like a tertiary system of some sort that is going to make you keep track of ammunition or whatever you do in a lot of other games. So I would say that based on where things currently are as we're heading into playtest soon, that would be there's a difference, but we want those to have storytelling impacts as opposed to just mechanical impacts. Not to say that there won't be mechanical impacts, but we need to make sure the story is very strongly represented there.
So it sounds like we're not going to really be able to play a primal human mage. So that's actually really cool. And I'm curious if that's like a clue, because I know that a lot of people have theorized that any human could cast magic if only they had the the discipline and the capabilities to learn the arcanums. But maybe that's not the case. Maybe 𝐀𝐽 really is special, the first of his kind, and he's going to develop maybe a teaching method to teach other humans how to do primal magic. And since this is taking place between seasons 3 and 4, he's still kind of growing and coming into his own. So perhaps that won't be what's going to end up happening there. Also, I think it's really cool. He talked about taking, like, what did he call it? Corruption or something like that for using dark magic? That sounds really cool. I like that they're focusing on the narrative more than the crunch, but the inner nerd inside of me, I like crunch, so the idea of having like an actual like mechanical system for like taking levels of corruption and your character like literally becoming eviler, and as your skin turns like that pale deathly white and you get that weird like ink stains all over you. I'm so on board with like actual systems like that. So I'm really curious. I really want to see how like dark magic is going to work as compared to primal magic in the next Q&A, or maybe I guess maybe the playtest material is supposed to be coming out really soon. So maybe I'll actually get a good look at it in that.
Marrow Vegas. Will Tales of Xadia be its own game, Cortex-based, or will we need additional materials to dive in? Excellent question. Both Tales of Xadia and Legends of Grayskull are going to be considered individual autonomous games. So you will not need additional Cortex products to play Tales of Xadia or Legends of Grayskull. The idea is that the first product for both of those will be kind of required for anything that comes into those product lines later than that. But the idea is you're getting a complete game, complete set of rules, even sample adventure in those initial game handbooks that are going to get you everything that you need to play.
Yeah, and feel free to mess around with it once you have them with the tools in Cortex Prime, because the whole thing kind of runs fairly seamlessly under the hood. But yeah, we wouldn't want you to have to get a whole bunch of extra books just so you can play the one you get.
Yeah, I think a really good way to put that is no, you don't need the Cortex Prime game handbook to play Tales of Xadia. It's not going to hurt for you to learn Cortex or any of those things, or to possibly use that for your own games, but you don't need it to play Tales of Xadia or Legends of Grayskull.
Alrighty, so that was the last question that they answered that had to do with Tales of Xadia. I'm really excited about this, guys. We learned quite a bit. Like what? We learned that we're going to be able to play as with dark magic, which is pretty cool. We learned that we're going to be able to play as 5 human races and 3 of the elven races. It's really cool. They're going to be releasing the playtest materials soon, so if you guys are interested in that, I'm going to put a link down in the description to the website. I think you just gotta put in like your email or something like that, and they're going to email you the playtest materials. Apparently that's going to be coming out really soon, so you guys might want to get on that if you guys are really interested in doing that. So thanks for watching this video. I hope you guys got as much enjoyment out of this information as I did. I know it's a little bit different than what I normally do. It's not quite as funny as I try to make it, but thank you guys so much for watching to the end of the video. If this is your first time on my channel, my name is 𝐓𝐰𝐢𝐭𝐭𝐞𝐫, and I make Dragon Prince content every single week here on this YouTube channel. So if you like that kind of thing, why not subscribe? And you can become part of the beautiful Dragon People community here on YouTube. That's the name of the community of us here on YouTube who love the Dragon Prince, and it's the best community, and we would love to have you be part of it. As always, I'm off to rewatch the Dragon Prince. I'll see ya.